Okay, welcome back to the Scenic Route. This is episode 6. Can't believe we've recorded 6 episodes, and very lucky to be able to spend some time with Dr. Kate Hadwen on my 6th episode. We're in December. We're at the end of a huge year again at Pimble. I don't think there's ever a not huge year. Thank you so much for spending some time with me.
That's a pleasure, Jake. I hope there's always a huge year at Pimble. So that's my plan. I don't know about you, but
we were just talking about how many speeches you've gone through in the last little while as well, and wrapping up for the year. Do you get to properly wrap up at all? Will you get to take some time off in the break?
I think I do. I'm going to speak with the staff about talking about speeches in the last speech of the year for the day today, and I am going to speak a little bit about compartmentalising, which is a skill that I've mastered. So I'm actually pretty good at, if I'm downing tools, I'm actually downing tools. And I say to the people who work most closely with me, you'll need to text me because I turn all my notifications off, everything. And if I'm at the beach, I'm actually at the beach. And I might be, thinking about stuff, but I'm not on my phone checking stuff all of the time. And so it's kind of one of my survival mechanisms, I think.
That's such an important message as well, coming from you today as we go on a break. Yeah. And is there any, before I ask the first question, we could even call this a Christmas episode, do you have any fun Christmas traditions that you have with your family at Christmas time?
Well...
Sorry, that was an on-the-spot question too.
I have 2 amazing sisters, and I have a really, really close family. And we try and get together as often as we can. And whenever we're together, we love loud music and dancing in the kitchen. So my sisters and I you'll often find us, I have a little sign that says this kitchen's for dancing. And
I love that.
Everybody
sign.
Actually have an actual sign. And everybody, in the neighbourhood kind of knows, the girls are in town.
Party time.
I have been known with my elder sister to hop on the push bike and put the speaker in the little cart thing and ride around town and sing and get up and dance in the park. So we love having fun together, and you can't be serious all the time. And so our family tradition is really just coming together and spending time together with one another.
I love that. I can picture it. The disco kitchen. That sounds amazing. The first question I ask all my guests, and this is a question you can take any way you want, is your first job. What was your first job? It could be, as I said, first ever, first out of school, or even first on your career path.
And I took this in 3 ways. My first job ever was working for my family. So we had a 16,000 acre farm is where I grew up, and one of 3 girls. So we always did farm jobs as well as we did everything else, and really blessed because my father was very entrepreneurial and one of the first people to introduce many modern technologies into the industry.
Wow.
And so was always really pushing the boundaries, and I spent many hours with him doing bookwork at night on the computer, which kind of gave me a great foundation for my career and my interest in tech. And my first ever job was working for them, and so I had to log my hours. I got paid an hourly rate. And that was how I got pocket money when I was a youngster.
What age would that have been, do you think, when you started?
Oh my gosh, that would have been, I don't know. I went to boarding school when I was 10.
Yeah. So
when I first came back for holidays, when I went to boarding school, I worked out, hang on a minute, actually I probably want pocket money. And so when I came back on the holiday break, Mum and Dad said, well, if you want pocket money, you'll have to earn it. And I started, driving. I was always driving tractors and trucks, and I have every manner of license you could ever imagine, Jake. I have a heavy, rigid license. I can drive forklifts and whatever you want.
I was looking for someone to drive that bigger bus the other day. I didn't realise you were someone I could have asked.
I try not to put my hand up for the risk factor, and I haven't driven them in a while. But certainly this holidays I'll be driving our tipper truck, as we're doing renovations on our house. So Matt will have me driving the truck to the dump. But anyway, so that was my first job. My second job was throughout uni. I worked all the way through uni, and mostly I worked in hospitality. Yeah. But my first job when I was at university was actually in a bar, and it was one of the toughest jobs ever. It was unbelievable because I had to work the tables, and the boss at the time would not allow us to have any note paper at all. And so you would go to
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So it was crazy, right? I'd go to a table of 10, And you can imagine young people, they're at a strip show or whatever's going on in that environment, because it was a function centre. It was a bar. And you would take everybody's order around the table. You had to remember their order and then take their money and remember who ordered what, their change, in what order, and get all of that laid out on the tray and bring it back. It was nuts. But
absolutely nuts.
It was like great for my memory.
Yeah, and do you reckon, because you're amazing with people's names, like I feel like, no, don't go down that path. No, but I said, when you see and you're talking to people, you seem to remember a lot anyway. Do you reckon that's helped with that as well?
I have no general knowledge whatsoever. So if you're at a trivia night, do not have me on your table. Okay. So the way my brain works is that I'm really good at remembering stuff I have to remember. I can remember a detail about, I don't know, some legal thing forever. But remembering any manner of trivia,
tallest mountain.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So that's the way my brain kind of works.
I wonder how it worked then with the bar. Like I'm picturing that, thinking that is so difficult.
Isn't it nuts?
Like it really is. The fact that you needed to do change, drink order, and oh my goodness.
Yeah, and these three people are paying together. They're on their own.
There's no split bills.
It's like, it was crazy. Anyway, so that was good grounding for working in a high pressure environment, and heaps of fun too. Yeah. And my first real job was actually at a place called Goodna State School in Queensland, and that was a really low socioeconomic environment. And you wouldn't do it now, but back in the day, I used to drive around and pick up some of the children, bring them to school with me, and then I used to drop them off in the evening, because it was the only way I knew that they would get to school. But it was a really, really tough environment. I got spat on the first time as an educator at that school. I've never felt so unclean in all my life. It was a wild. I could tell you many stories about that school. But that taught me so many things about just being grateful, for the environment that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And Jake, I never felt so needed in any school as I did in that school. And, some of those children invited me to their weddings, and because I know I had a profound impact on their lives. And for many of them, I was the only stable person in their world. And so it was a beautiful place to start my career. Tough, but beautiful. Yeah.
What a impact though as well. And to start in a school like that, I remember one of my pracs, and it felt like a penitentiary. Yes. We're coming and they had barbed wire fences, and it was just a school out west a little bit. But I learned so much, like you're saying at that school, being adaptable and being able to go with any situation. We had a teacher get kicked. And then they just put me as a first year prac, you're in charge for the rest of the term. And I was like, I didn't have what became not a prac teacher, but it's those experiences, isn't it, that you really shape you. And you were saying there to have that recognition that is something that you appreciate within your career. So that was your first dip into education. Yeah. Where did you go from there? Where was the next step?
Well, at that stage, I had two little children. So I had my first bub when I was at uni, and my next one some 13 months later. And so I took both the kids to uni with me, and I lived in Brisbane, and I was at uni in Toowoomba, so I used to drive up and back the hour and a half or whatever. And I do remember once turning up to an early morning lecture, and it was like an 8 a.m. lecture or something like that. And I had Tim, my eldest, with me, and he was just a little ticker. And I walked into class to put my books down first, and I just left him in the hallway in the pram, and thought I'll open the door, put the books in, and then I'll get going, because I couldn't do both at once. And I remember walking in, and I was like 5 minutes late, and the lecturer said to me, you're late, where's your note from Mum? And I was like, just hold on a minute. And I walked out and walked back in and said, I am sorry I'm late. I am Mum, and there's the note. He was like, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. I was 20.
Yeah, wow.
And I looked like I was 20. I was young, and I had this little bub. And so, I think I I learned a lot, from early on in my life about toughing it out and about hard work, and sort of never shied away from that. And then I've forgotten what you asked me.
No. That was the next step, and you've answered it really well. So you're at university with a baby. That's tricky.
Then two.
Then two, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what are you studying at that time?
I was studying primary education.
Okay.
So I started my career as a primary educator.
Yeah.
So that my first job was that Goodness State School job, and I took leave after a year of working in that school. The kids were really little, and I wanted one day off, a Friday off, and I remember the guy from the district education thing saying to me, if you take this Friday off, you'll never get another job again. I was being really threatened about having one day off. Anyway, and as we all know, usually when you're a teacher and you work part-time, you actually work full-time because you do all the prep for the person who comes in for the day anyway, even though they do a wonderful job of when they do come in, you're the full-time teacher. Anyway, I stepped out of that job and I worked with a company called the Olive Tree Trust, and they brought in a program called Peace Builders. That was a program based out of the United States, based on research, an amazing resilience building program. And I adopted that when I was in my classroom, and my classroom won a state award for being the lead classroom in that program. And so as I stepped out of that teaching position, or as I took the day off, they jumped in and said, do you want to come and work for us part-time? So I kind of ended up leaving Goodna.
Yeah.
I went to Oxley State School. I was kind of in my first sort of reasonable leadership role there. I think maybe my third year out of teaching, I was the curriculum coordinator for Oxley State School for a number of years there part-time, and was also doing the Peace Builders gig. And then I ended up working for the Olive Tree Trust on a full-time capacity, won some large government grants, and I worked nationally to implement that program. And most importantly, where I learned one of the really pivotal things in my career was working in the top-end group schools out of Darwin, which are all really tiny, predominantly dry First Nations communities that were only accessible by plane.
Wow.
And I implemented that program in a number of the tech schools, and that was such a privilege, Jake. Oh my gosh, I learned so much through that opportunity. So yeah, that was kind of my sort of second job.
Second 4-part job. Okay, so you were with, I'm trying to backtrack a little bit because there were a few pieces then. You're working out of the classroom. Did you get back into the classroom quickly then, or were you with that company for a while?
Yeah, I was with that company for quite some time, and I moved up to Townsville, and I've kind of always been doing like multiple things at once.
Yeah.
And so when I moved to Townsville, I was employed by Townsville. I was still working for the Olive Tree Trust, and we won some really large grants out of Townsville, so I was implementing that program across multiple schools in Townsville. I then also started at Townsville Grammar, and I was running the girls' boarding houses there. So I moved on campus, and that's where I started. I went to boarding school, and I always worked part-time in boarding school in Brisbane while I was doing the Olive Tree Trust thing and the other thing. When I moved to Townsville, I was working in boarding, and then I kind of went back into the classroom a couple of days a week, working in the government sector and then working in the Catholic sector. And so, I had a day job working for them, a couple of days a week working for Olive Tree Trust, kind of corralling schools and running PD sessions, and then running the boarding house for Townsville Grammar. So that was that kind of period.
I'm tired. I'm tired.
And
how far? Where are we at? Yeah, where are we at? Like
we're mid-20s. We're mid-20s is where I was at there. Yeah.
Mid-20s. And you said so you've got 3 children at this stage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Where to next? I'm a bit scared to ask where to next because I feel like we've had our career.
No, sort of calms down after that. I moved to Perth College as head of boarding, and
so you're in Queensland at this time, so you went right across to Perth. And had you done much in Western Australia before, or was that
nothing?
Because I've never been to Western Australia.
Oh, you've
so one spot
got
I reckon
to
I
get
feel
there.
like I will.
Oh, it's so beautiful, so beautiful. I knew it was this lovely place with wildflowers.
Okay.
That was the sum total of my knowledge about Western Australia. But I was 29 and
Yeah.
I got offered this, cracking role as head of boarding of a boarding house that had about 125 students in it. So it was not insignificant. And it was just a great opportunity for me to kind of do something different and step into that role was on their senior leadership team. And,
Okay.
and I felt like, because it was a smaller school, it had 1,200 students in it. And it was just a wonderful opportunity for me to, step into a more senior, or, more senior in schools kind
Yeah.
of leadership role. So,
And you were a
it was
boarder
great.
yourself. Do you feel a lot of what you had when you were a boarder, or the way that other boarding mistresses, or what's the opposite of a boarding mistress? What's the male version of a boarding
master.
mistress? Master, there we go, sorry. Boarding master. Did you take any of that on with this role? What you found good in those roles?
Oh, absolutely. I was really guided by that. And my sister absolutely hated her years at boarding, so my elder sister. And I think probably she was, a little bit scarred for the balance of her life because of that. And I've always been really honest with boarding families. If it doesn't work for them, then I say to them, I know you don't want to take your daughter back to Dubbo or wherever it is, but this is not, she's not going to settle in boarding, and this is not going to be good for her life long term. So, I've always had really honest conversations with parents about that.
That's so important, because you do so often hear like these stories I think boarding seems to have changed quite a lot in how many years, but so scarred, from people you talk that are like 40, 50 now and have had horrendous experiences. So it's so important having someone like yourself in that role that had gone through that.
Yes, it has transformed, thankfully, and it needed to. And, I'm really grateful for the opportunities I had as a boarder. As I said, I started boarding when I was 10, and I got to, and I was reasonably naughty as a boarding student.
Can we get a story? Can we get a naughty story?
Well, I did spend some time at home.
Okay.
Involuntarily. Got caught doing something, as I say to people, try not to get caught.
Yeah.
And if you do, don't do it again.
It's only a crime when you get caught, isn't it?
Totally.
Is that how it
That's
works?
my theory anyway. I always say to the girls, there's one thing to be naughty, but there's another thing to be disrespectful. So I think I was never, ever disrespectful when I was at school. I was always pushing the boundaries. And I love the kids here that are cheeky. I think their stories are hilarious. I mean, sometimes I'll say to them, that is actually not representative of the education we're providing you here. Wander back out to the chair when you've thought of something that actually reflects the quality of the education. Come back in and try that story again. And they don't know what to do with that. They're like, I don't know whether she's joking with me or what it is, but truly.
Yeah.
I got to year 10 and I just didn't want to board anymore. I was totally capped out of the rules, the formality, the everything.
That's 5 years, isn't it? 4 years you boarded then? Was that, or even more?
More than that, maybe it was 6.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, anyway. And so, it was probably closer to, by the time I left, it was 5 or 6 years. Anyway, I went and lived with the headmaster and his wife of the junior school that I boarded at for 6 months because I just couldn't do it anymore. And, I do say to the boarding families when the girls are really capped out of the rules or just they're upset but they don't know why. And I remember that feeling so clearly of just feeling really down and I don't know really why, but it's just not working. And I say, just take her home for 2 weeks. She just needs to get away from the structure. So it's helped me a lot when you ask me about decision making and those types of things, particularly around boarding. It helped me a lot to be able to understand that environment and how best to serve our young people in those environments. So it's been really instructive in my career.
Yeah, wow. So you're now at head of boarding at Perth.
Yes.
And being able to change that
masters.
quite a lot. And you're doing a master's now.
Yeah, so that's
I was going to say, what are the other 3, 4
like what else? So I...
and the 3 children have moved with you to Perth.
Correct.
At what ages are they when you get there?
Angus was 3. Okay. Yep. And Tim and Lachlan were sort of in year 4 and 5 type of thing, something like that. So they were about that.
And was it co-ed at that school, or was it? Could they come to? No, so they were somewhere else.
Yeah, they were somewhere else. They were somewhere else. And I remember nowadays, when Angus was a youngster, he hated the word soon, because I'd go to the boarding house and I'd say to him, "I'll be back soon," and he'd say, "No, not soon." That means you're never coming back. And so it was. Anybody who's worked in boarding knows it's stupid hours. It's crazy hours to do the job well. You are there a lot, and I have just utmost admiration and respect for anybody who works in boarding, because it's long hours. So it was tough, but I did my master's while I was in that role, and then I moved on to begin my PhD. 3 years after I got there, I met Donna Cross, who is the most inspirational person I have ever had the pleasure of working with. And Donna offered me to come and work with her after I'd been at PC for 3 years. And I said to her, I've committed to this school for 5. I didn't quite make it 5. I think it was there 4.5. And so when I left Perth College, I went to work for Donna Cross in the university world.
Okay.
And so that was, that was what my next thing was, moving into academia more seriously. And that was a really interesting phase of my career.
Was there a lot of research involved there? Was it a lot of
research? And one of the questions you'd asked me, Jake, was something about what was the biggest detour.
Oh yes.
And I don't know what was meant by detours, but for me, working in research, I just remember sitting in my first team meeting, and I'd been in education for a while, and I was doing a master's by research at that stage before I finished that and moved to the PhD. I just remember thinking, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Like, I don't understand any of these words, and I thought, how can I not understand any of these words? They're all research terms, but I'd just never been exposed to that really in my career. And so it was just a time of enormous growth, and I was really privileged to be Donna's 2IC and get an opportunity to lead incredible projects. And I wrote down, some of the things that I'm really proud of during that time. We worked heavily with the first ever e-safety commissioner in this country, and we wrote all of the legislation, all the framework around the e-safety commissioner's office for the government while that was being set up.
That's so important now still.
Important. And so I feel really, when I see that kind of work, I think, I feel really proud that I know I was a significant part of that work.
And do you think the push then, sorry to interrupt, with the wise phones and the looking at with what social media is doing to our young people, do you think that was kind of the first thoughts of that when you were with the e-safety commissioner?
Absolutely. When I was employed by Donna, it was really the first ever kind of studies into the impact of technology on young people, and in particular social media. So it was so long ago that MySpace was actually that was the era we're talking about, which really was the beginning stage of social media. So that's when I was in that started work in that area of research. So I feel like I've travelled this journey for the length of the journey of this, which has been really fascinating. And because I'm really privileged to still be a fellow with a couple of universities that still are heavily involved in research, I do get sent lots of papers to review and all sorts of things to look at. So I feel really connected with that space still. During that time, I also had the privilege of co-writing the Child Safe Framework for Australia, which was just such an interesting piece of work to work on, and how you think about all of the research that builds into something that might create a framework that might impact on the lives of young people nationwide is a really just a real privilege to be part of. So
these are huge things.
Really huge things, right? Really
big impact.
Things.
Big impact.
Yeah. And one of the things was one of the questions in there was what kind of derailed you or brought you back, and I at the time, that staying in that type of work would have taken me down a very different pathway. And I thought a lot about that. But I just couldn't get over this kind of gnawing feeling that I didn't feel connected to the young people that I was serving. Yeah. There's something really beautiful about being in a school where, even now, where I don't have that personal connection with students, which I really miss, I still know in some way, shape or form, the decisions that I've made have impacted on the lives of that particular group of students and that student walking across the stage. There'll always be one or two that I know for that student, I've been able to change their life significantly, and that's
Okay.
the moment they'll always remember. And I missed that in research. And I kind of said to Donna, look, I could probably do 5 years here, and then I need to go back into a school because I just miss the contact, with the young people. So, yeah. But it was it was a really cool part of my career, and I can't let research go. It's always part of my life now.
Yeah.
And I'll probably at some stage in my career, I'll venture back full time into research. Maybe.
Soon. Which that can be on the side as well.
Jake, like not everybody feels that way. Some people would be like, you can go tomorrow.
No, I didn't. We're not going down that path.
That's my job.
Yeah. So when we're thinking of this career, and it's very much a scenery, we've gone on a lot of twists and turns. Would you have taken a shortcut anywhere in your career that you've gone, what I've got to here, it would have been easier if I jumped to that spot quicker?
No. I thought a lot about this question, about whether there were parts of it that I felt were, didn't really build me in any way. And my advice to people who come in, because there was one role after I worked when I was working with the recruiters, when I decided to move out of research and move back into schools, the recruiter said, you're going to have to get a job in a school for a couple of years before you can be a head, because you've got to transition back in. So you've got to have some sort of runs on the board in a school again after that role. And that role I felt like I could do with my eyes closed a bit, And so I always say to people, when you're in that role and you're ambitious, then, I set myself a target of, okay, I've got 3 years to do a PhD from start to finish. I want to be in this role for 3 years, 3 to 4 years max. And I'm going to lean into this opportunity because I know I can do that role pretty easily, And so I used that window to do my PhD. So how do I, when you say the scenic route or not do an opportunity, for me it's about, this is the opportunity, so how can I make the best of this opportunity? And that's the way I've always thought through, my career through that lens.
Okay, so that's when you did your PhD?
Correct.
And that was 3 years, did you say?
3 years.
That sounds quick.
Yeah,
I don't know how.
I was so blessed because I worked in research, remember?
Okay.
A lot of people, and I see, people around me who enter into this PhD space, and it takes me back to that very first meeting I spoke about where, I had no idea what was going on. And then I, through leading a lot of research projects, I got to understand how to write academically well, how to use SPSS and software like that, how to use NVivo and all the qual software, how to actually run focus groups. So I had all of the training. And, don't get me wrong, I'm a hard worker and I work damn hard.
Yes.
I had a rule that I wasn't allowed to go to sleep unless I'd done something on my PhD every single night without fail. And so, I would do my schoolwork until 9 p.m. To keep on top of that. And then I would have to start my PhD work. I would do that from 9 till 11 every single night. I couldn't do that anymore because I'm just old, and I just don't have the, I could possibly if I wanted to lean into another window like that, but I knew I had a window to do it. And every single weekend I sacrificed pretty much everything else in my life in order to do that. So it's like everything, everyone has a choice. It's just what are you prepared to sacrifice to make that choice reality?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like scale of 1 to 10, not ambitious. I'm like 11. So I know that about myself. I'm comfortable with that because that's just who I am.
Yeah, and I like that you said I took it. I had those 3 years, and I mapped it out and I did it.
Yep, that's exactly right. And it was funny. I got the phone call from the recruiter for PLC Perth saying, we'd really like you to come and interview for this job. And I was literally just closing out writing the thesis. I literally posted it. I posted the thesis like 2 rounds into the 5 rounds of job interview for that job.
Wow.
So,
And do you remember the first time someone said called you doctor? Was that pretty cool?
It was so cool. It is so cool. And, in that period between when I'd had the kids and when I'd finished my PhD, I became divorced during that time, which was a really, really, really hard. I didn't have any line of sight of that. And that was a really, just a deep shock for me. I had kind of previously believed if I tried hard enough, things were within my control. And I learned through that not everything is within my control. Even doesn't matter how hard I try, some things are outside of my control. It was an important life lesson. But I really, really didn't like the fact that for women, for girls and women, you're Mrs. or you're Miss, and people make judgments about either or.
Yeah.
And for me, becoming doctor was so significant for me for that reason alone.
Yeah.
You know, outside of the fact that it meant something academically, it meant that I didn't have to be labelled as a woman, as Mrs. or Ms. And, you know, that was really significant for me.
And was it one of those moments, the first, did you go, do you remember it when someone said it? Because I think that's from, you know, 20 and you're going into a university lecture with your children to then becoming a doctor, like that, like you're saying, so significant and such a huge life tick.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember the moment. But one moment I do remember about that was my principal supervisor was Donna Cross, and I remember, you know, writing to her and forwarding on her an email where I'd been appointed as the head of PLC Perth, and it was, you know, we're delighted to have appointed Dr. Kate Hadwen, and she wrote back and said, there are so many things about this I love, you know, from having you, you know, congratulations, you've completed your PhD, to, you know, getting this job and whatever. And it was just a moment from somebody who I respect so deeply. And it's always so meaningful when it comes from somebody who you really admire, you know, that they're saying, hey, you know, good on you.
Great job.
Well done. And she also travelled the journey through all of those challenging years with me. And she knew how much I sacrificed to make those things a reality, and how much my family sacrificed to support me to make that a reality. So it was lovely coming from somebody who really understood the cost involved, you know, to be in that place. You know, it's not by chance. Yeah.
What a journey. So you're now at PLC Perth, and you're the principal at PLC Perth. How did that go? What was that journey like? First headship.
I think the greatest surprise at PLC or in any is certainly when you become a head of a school. The thing that really struck me was that for any other leadership role I'd been in, I really felt like there was much more of a teamwork in making decisions. There was much more of like in your role, for example, you and Anthony and others would be discussing decisions, and then that would be the decision. When you move into the head of the school role, it's your decision. You know, everything becomes your decision. And it doesn't matter how many other people have had input. And yes, you'll discuss it with the team and whatever, but everybody looks to you to make the final decision. And I understand that. But I remember saying, you know, to the deputy at the time, what do you think about that? And I remember him saying to me, well, you know, we've discussed what I think. At the end of the day, it's your decision. You're the head. You know, and I just remember early on feeling like, that's a whole lot of responsibility right there. So that was kind of, you know, that was the thing that struck me, I guess, when I first started, was just the responsibility.
Was there any big decision that you remember that it was like, I'm going to have to say yes or no to this, and it's in that first time as principal?
Yeah. Look, the hardest decisions for me are always, you know, when a student needs to leave the school.
Okay.
I find that really, really really difficult, and I think probably I've been criticised for being too soft, and I truly believe that you know, everybody deserves a chance, and young people make mistakes, and how we help them learn from those mistakes is what will help them become the people that they're going to become. So those things are really hard for me. I find those decisions way more difficult than decisions about big buildings or decisions about whatever, you know, because they're technical, they're not transformational decisions. You know, a decision about moving a young person on is transformational for them, good or bad, sometimes good, you know, because it's the right thing to do.
Right spot for them.
But it's never cut and dry.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm always really alive to the cost to the child for the rest of their life that some of those decisions might have. So, yeah, they're my most difficult decisions still.
I'm thinking of your job now. You must have, I can't even think how many decisions you must have to make on a day-by-day basis.
It's crazy. I mean, when I moved here to Pymble, I thought the job would be similar to PLC, but a bit bigger.
Yeah.
Is what I thought.
What was Perth? Or
1,200.
1,200. Yeah. Okay. So nearly double.
That's
or more than double now.
More than double. And 1,200, about the same size as every other girls' school, right? Pretty much, give or take. Most others anyway. And what I learned is that Pymble is not at all like that. Not at all like running that. So different. It's the scale. The scale of the operation is absolutely so different. And so the call on you to be involved in the business machinations of the school is really high. And that fight to, be present, to get out with the students, to do some things that bring you joy, is a very alive for me every day. But yeah, the decisions are big. The decisions are big and many. And one of the key things I remember the head of Perth College saying to me is the most important thing is to make the decision.
Yeah, okay.
The worst thing you can do is vacillate. And sometimes you'll get it right and sometimes you'll get it wrong, but no decision is worse than a decision that, you need to backtrack from or whatever. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. You've got you've got a great gut sense about decisions that you make.
Yeah.
You've got a good nose for, that's why you're where you are. That's why we're all where we are, because we've got a good nose for our own area. Make the decision and learn how to eat humble pie quickly. When you stuff it up.
Yeah. And you're going to. We're human.
Of course we are.
Yeah.
And you've seen lots of examples of that, Jake, where I've stuffed something up but you will, I will be on that really super quickly.
Yeah.
Really super quickly. And it's a broad public, stuffed it up.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for letting me know. I'll do better next time. I'm here to serve and learn and, thank you for letting me know.
That's so important, isn't it? Putting your hands up and going, I stuffed up.
Yeah.
And we are human and that happens. I can't think of one, I'll be honest, but...
I can tell you, but I'll be looping other people in. I was like, yes, you do, but, otherwise it'll be like acknowledging that other people are always involved in those things. So.
But you started, so you're at Perth, PLC Perth.
Yes.
For how long?
4 years.
4 years. And then you came here and it was like COVID. Yes. You had to start at Pymble, this huge new school.
Yeah.
And the decisions then would have been coming every second with COVID.
Yeah.
And we made some pretty huge decisions during that time, I remember.
Yeah.
Was that a tough time to start?
I'm always going to be somebody pushing the boundaries. And when the board appointed me, I said to them, what you'll need to do is hold me back. You won't need to be pushing me to find new things, to new exciting ideas and those type. That is in my DNA.
Yeah.
So, I'm always going to be, if I think the team can handle that decision, I'm always going to be pushing for that decision. COVID for me was very much at the background of my mind, not at the foreground of my mind. So, as you know, Jake, I was appointed at Pymble and started on the Monday, and we had a student take her life on the Saturday night.
Yeah.
So that was my very first day at the school. I had not met pretty much most of the team, and my first day at Pymble was a critical incident meeting on Sunday.
Yeah.
Before the first staff day on Monday to introduce me as the new head. So that was our journey within 12 months.
Yeah.
We had 2 other students in that cohort die, and that was in the middle of COVID. So that was, halfway through 2019 and 2020. And I remember sitting on Teams calls with all of the other heads and everybody else going, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare and how do we deal with that? I just remember thinking, if only I had just COVID to deal with. Our community was in absolute free fall and our staff were in free fall and COVID for me was a technical thing, technical. We have a gun team here. We can lead on this, make decisions, but for me, that wasn't the work that took my time and my attention at that time. But I do remember a couple of decisions about COVID, like a couple of really interesting things was... when we made the decision, I was under a lot of pressure by the Australian Medical Association and members within it, a lot of the medical fraternity, phoning and so on and saying, because Pymble is such a big school and, a number of schools see Pymble as a leader. Yeah. And if Pymble makes a decision to go online, then people will follow.
Yeah.
Everyone else will follow, or not in time, everyone else will follow. And so we'd done a lot of work on, as you know, the magnificent IT team and what we could do and how we could set it up and whatever. And we also had the federal government, with a lot of pressure saying we are not going online. So 2 competing priorities. And our job is to make, as I keep saying, to make the best decision for our students and our staff.
Yeah.
That is my job. I understand the pressures and decisions everybody else makes, but my job is to focus on, I'm employed for Pymble. And I do get the broader context. So we made the decision to move online. And I got one of the most abusive phone calls I have ever had in my career from a parliamentarian.
Really?
About that decision. And I mean, I'm really grateful that I had the most amazing chair, and I phoned the chair actually in tears, and I'm pretty tough. It takes a fair bit to crack me. Just saying I have had the most disrespectful phone call. I'm lost for words, and my beautiful chair phoned that person and just said, if you ever speak to our head again like that, I'll make that publicly known. It was, it took me by surprise.
Yeah,
so there were some decisions. Certainly when the first day after our students moved off site, I was really emotional. It was something, and you will recall this. It was an unnatural thing.
It was eerie.
It was really eerie, to have this campus and nobody on it, and it didn't feel even like holidays.
No.
It felt, what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was like that. It was like as close to apocalyptic or whatever that word is. It did it, and this place is alive all the time.
Yes.
And it was so quiet.
Yes.
I'm going back to what you said just before. To have to go through something like that so early, and you put everything in such good perspective. Is that the word I'm looking for? Like what you had to go through to start with, but then someone to speak to you like that as well. I've got that motto, I think, which is so important, which is don't be a dick. And that's such a, do you know what I mean? Like it's that's just a not, why would anyone talk to someone like that as well?
Yeah.
I think I think should be on everyone's HR. That's all you need in an HR policy,
right.
really.
It totally is. It totally is. No, I'm so with you. And look, everybody is in those circumstances, everybody is under pressure.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And I'm not one to hold grudges, but we don't always show up as our best selves.
No.
And that's
being nice. You're being nice. You're being nice. You're being nice. Looking back, is there one stop on your journey that you'll always remember?
I feel like we've spoken about each stop from the very first one kind of through, almost skipping over a couple, but each stop has taught me really profound lessons. And one of the beautiful things, as you've heard kind of from my third year out from uni, I've been in reasonably significant leadership roles. And, one of the beautiful things is when you've had a career like mine and you've moved a lot, like every 3-4 years, you pick up wonderful, wonderful colleagues / friends when you leave places. And that's been a true blessing.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't have skipped over any of them because they've each taught me important lessons. And as hard as they've been, I'm a much more rounded person because of all of those challenges. I understand when somebody walks in here, there is, with my husband's 2 children and my 3 are 5, and we've been together since his children were little and they've always lived with us. So that's why I always call them our five children. There's very, very, very rarely anything that walks into my office that I've not dealt with on a personal level before. Most things I have dealt with, from family cancer to every other manner of everything, and the challenges are what make you a better, wiser person, even though you wouldn't want to have those again. So no, every bit's unique and special. Any
twist or turn we missed that you'd like to finish off with? Otherwise, I've got my final question. No,
I don't think so. No, there's been, as you've heard, there's just been lots of change and lots of growth, and I've been privileged to be surrounded by remarkable people in my career. Like
Such
you,
a
Jane?
scenic route.
No, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's the team that makes the dreams.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. Well, I'm going to ask the final question, and this is one of my favourites because you learn a little bit about someone's history and music choices. What would be the main song on your Scenic Route soundtrack, and if you've got any reasons for that song?
Yeah. I love, at the moment, I have like dance beat, like some sort of heavy beat rock thing at the moment on Spotify.
Oh, yeah.
Next week, it'll probably be classical. The week after that, it'll be country. So I love every genre of music. But my choice for today is Landslide by Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
And I love that song, but people sometimes think that song is about love or relationships or whatever. But actually, that song is not about that. Stevie Nicks wrote that song about ambition. And what she wrote about that song was about the uncertainty of how one will hold things together in the pursuit of a dream. And I love that, how will you hold it all together in the pursuit of a dream? And I feel like that's been, the tenure of my work. Like I feel like in every role, I've had a dream about the impact that I hope to make on whatever it is, whether it's through the resilience program that I did or in the many boarding communities that I've been associated with or in the schools that I've, had the privilege of working in, is that, I have a dream as an outcome for the young people that I work with and also for the staff that I have the privilege of working alongside. But the pursuit of that dream for me is a high one and a high bar that I hold for myself. And so, the song for me is about how do I hold it all together, which is, every day getting up, hoping that I've done enough to have served my community well.
Perfect song, I think, for your Scenic Route soundtrack. And what amazing reasons. And thank you so much. It's been such a privilege spending some time with you, learning about your Scenic Route. I hope you have a really Merry Christmas and enjoy that time with your family. I can picture you now, Kate, dancing with your sisters in your kitchen, rocking on. I think that's the place to be.
It certainly is. Thanks so much, Jake. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I've been afraid of changing 'cause I built my life around you, but time makes you bolder.